Hey guys, it's Ashley with Baby Ring International Knoxville, and today I'm going to talk to you about ring slings. We have a great video that's specifically for newborns in a ring, wearing a newborn in a ring sling. Wearing a little bitty baby in a ring sling has its own sets of challenges and tips and tricks, so I suggest if you have a little small baby that you check that video out. So if you have an infant, older infant, or even a toddler, then I'm going to cover a lot of things in this video specifically for wearing your older baby. So this is a great quick option if you don't want a whole lot of fuss. They're easy to pop on and easy to adjust. They do have the downside to them is that they are one shoulder, so all of your weight is being bared on one shoulder, so it can really wear your shoulder out and tend to get uncomfortable, especially with an older baby. I'm going to cover just some lingo, the parts of the sling, how to thread your sling, and all that before I get into wearing. I'm going to try to cover everything about a sling. So these are our rings. I have the ring sling unthreaded right now just to show you. This is the shoulder part. So this is a gathered shoulder. There's also, or this is a pleated shoulder, I'm sorry. There's also gathered shoulders and some other options out there as well. Then the hemmed edges at the top and the bottom are called our rails. So when I talk about tightening, I'll say like tighten your top rail or your bottom rail. That's obviously top, bottom, and that's the hemmed area. Then the end that hangs out of your rings once it's threaded is called the tail. That's this end right here, the loose end that will just be hanging down. That's your tail. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and show you how to thread your ring sling. So this should already be done before you put your baby in. And you can keep it threaded. You don't have to rethread your ring sling every time, but anyway, just for in case you're washing it or whatever, I try to just lift it up and keep it nice and flat like that, so it's not twisted. And then I put my hands through the two rings so I can pull it through the center, like so. And you can see I didn't twist it up. And now I just open up these rings. I'm going to fold this back over, again, not twisting, and put it, it's hard to see what I'm doing, just through that one ring. So basically over the first ring and under the next ring. You can see how it's nice and straight, okay? Now the one thing that I do every time that I am getting ready to put my sling on is I gather it on the rings, because tightening and loosening it tends to overlap, and once it overlaps it makes it very hard to tighten. So I just start on this side and kind of bunch it in my left hand, and I'm holding it in my right, and I just gather it all the way across my hand. It was already nicely gathered. It'd be easier to see if it was messed up, but anyway, you can see that it's nice and gathered on the rings. Okay, now a couple things about which side to put your rings on. I feel like this is preference. Some people don't like to have the rings on their dominant side because they feel like it hinders that hand. If you have a kid on your the baby in a hip carry, then you are going to want to put it on the rings on your dominant hand, because it's going to be hard to use this hand that has your kid over here. So, and when you're going to put this on, basically what you do is, if I'm right-handed, I put my left hand through. The shoulder area is at the back and the rings are in the front, so I put my left hand through over my head. All right. A common mistake a lot of people make is they have the ring sling really loose like this. I'll grab my baby up. Can I see you for a minute? Can you go up me for a minute? Oh, is your truck gonna go for a ride too? Okay, so when I have it really loose like this and I put my baby in, and I try to tighten up a lot, you can see what happens to my rings, where they end up at. They're way down here. When we talk about where we want rings on a ring sling, we say baroche height or corsage height, which is like this little hollow right here in between like your collarbone and your shoulder bone. So we want those to be right there. So obviously it's not gonna hurt anything for him to be low like this. It's gonna make it so that he doesn't have very good coverage over his body. If you had a little baby, it'd be really challenging, because then their head's going to be knocking into the rings. It just makes positioning wrong. So I'm going to show you a trick to kind of pre-tightening. I'm gonna put you back down for a minute. Hopefully you don't get mad with all this back and forth. Okay. So, I like to pre-tighten up the ring sling so that way I only have a little bit of tightening to do and my rings won't move very much. So you can actually put your arm in here to kind of act as a dummy for your baby. And then tighten up quite a bit of the ring sling. So you can see my baby's gonna pop right in there. Another little trick, especially if you're doing a hip carry, is to just kind of put your thumb in here and pull it about to where you want your baby to sit on your hip. And that'll give you a good idea of where baby's gonna go. One thing I didn't talk about is tightening. So when you're tightening the fabric in the rings, I would suggest tightening in a fan shape. So I pull up and out this way and then in the directions. That will help keep it from overlapping when we're tightening. And also I try to pull out versus down. That will keep my rings from moving. Okay, so first of all, I'm gonna put him in a tummy to tummy. So I did my dummy arm. He's a big dude, so I need a decent amount of space. If you had a little baby, you pull your arm in. You wanna come up? You pull your arm in tighter and tighten up around that, but with a big baby, just kind of give yourself some room. And then I put my rings where I want them. So corsage height, nice and capped on my shoulder, nice and spread on my back. Come here. And I'm gonna start by putting him in a tummy to tummy. Now, he's a big guy, so I have to kind of sling him up on my shoulder pretty high, but basically with your baby, you wanna put him up on your shoulder like you're burping them, so nice and high. And then I always reach my hand through this pouch right here to help guide baby's feet in. Okay, and now I'm holding him underneath his bottom. Since I did a lot of pre-tightening, it'll already kind of catch underneath him. All right. But I'm just gonna kind of lift up. Oh, hi. And it already kind of made the seat for him already. I'm actually gonna loosen this a little bit because it's too tight. Just lift up on the ring a little to loosen him up. Okay. Something that you can do to help make the seat, you can either just like push that fabric up in between the two of you like I did, or you can actually reach in between the two of you, grab that fabric up and pull it up. Hi, are you wanting to snuggle? You can see now it's pretty nice and tight. It's secure across his back. I just need to tighten up that top rail a little bit. My rings stayed in position where they're supposed to be. And you can see, I'm going to try to get him to keep his arms in for a minute just so you can see. He's got a nice deep seat. The ring sling is going from one knee to the other knee. His bottom is lower than his knees, and he's sitting in it kind of like a hammock. If you had a little baby, they would just kind of lay on your body and kind of curl up against you really nicely. If you have a big kid, they're going to, like he's doing, they're going to look around and push away. My kids actually really like their arms free, which is perfectly fine, but you want this to make sure this stays up underneath his armpits and it stays nice and tight. If he starts arching and moving around, it's going to loosen up quite a bit. That's okay. All right. So this is a tummy to tummy with a very big baby. With a big baby. Okay. So I'm going to take him out and then I'm going to show you how to do a hip carry. So again, to loosen, all you have to do is kind of lift his weight up, lift on the ring, and loosen up. And then I just grab underneath both of his arms and lift him straight up into the air. I'm gonna snag on this butt. Okay. Get your truck? Okay. So you can see it's really loose again. And it's kind of overlapped on the rings. So I'm going to regather it on the rings like I did before. I'm just doing it quick. And I'm going to tighten up again. Actually, I'm going to do what I was showing you before where I just kind of gather it in my hand to my hip. So this is about where I want. I still want to tighten all the way across the rings, but I'm using this kind of test hip trick instead of doing the dummy hand. Sai, come here. All right, and so I'm gonna do the same thing, put him up on my shoulder. I like to get his feet in first and then position him on my hip. Now, if I sit him down so that he's knee to knee without pulling this up, first I'm holding his back, then I can make sure that my rings and everything, that he's in a good position on my hip, and my rings are in the right place. If they were too low, then all I would have to do is just kind of lift him up and scooch this fabric up, which it really helps with repositioning everything. Then I just would need, I'm still holding him with my hand, pull this fabric up. The other thing I do when I'm getting him in that pocket and positioning him is I'm pulling my fabric from the back. So you could see when I was making the seat, I'm pulling this fabric forward. And then just have a little bit of tightening to do. But since I'm pulling forward, you can see I have all that slack right there. And I could just do that little bit of tightening right there. If that was all sitting behind me on my back, it would be kind of harder to get it around. All right. So you can see how this would be much easier with a bigger baby to put him on my hip versus on my front. I have a little bit better range of view. I wouldn't be like completely be hard to still like make a meal. Might be hard to wash dishes, but if I was grocery shopping, I could push a grocery cart, or I could at least take care of my kids or feed myself with one hand. Yeah. But the hip carry is really convenient for once baby starts getting a little older and wanting to look around. The developmental signs that you want to look for is that baby's starting to sit upright. They don't have to sit fully unsupported, but you want to be looking for them being able to hold themselves upright. I always say a really good indicator is if you're starting to carry them on your hip, because you'll hit a point where you start to like walk around the house with them on your hip, and that's usually a good sign that they're ready for a hip carry. So anyway, hip carry with a big kid. Again, you can do the same trick that for the seat like we did with the tummy to tummy. You could reach in between the two of you and grab up the fabric, or you can just kind of lift baby up and get that fabric in between the two of you. All right, so that was a heart to heart and a hip carry. Hi. Oh, now I'm going to try to quick show you a back carry, as long as he'll cooperate with me. All right, loosen up my rings, lift them up, pull that sling down. All right, I hear you. Okay. Now to do, oh, you want to go up? I hear you. I'm regathering everything. I'm sorry. I'm going to pick you up right away, okay? Regathering everything, kind of get my positioning where I want it to be. And then this time, I'm going to put my rings, I'm just going to take them from where they were and slide them around to my back. Because I'm going to put my baby on my hip and then pull them around. And I want my rings to end up in the same spot. All right? Come here, Zai. Go up again? Okay. So I'm going to do the same thing with the hip carry. Get his feet in there. Make him a nice seat to sit in. Where are you going? Pull this up high on his back. Now it's harder to tighten everything since my rings are back here. So that's a good reason to make sure everything's nice and tight before you put your ring sling on. But we do want it a little loose to move them around. Because we're going to basically like hip scoot him. So you can see he's got a nice seat. I'm going to reach behind me. You can see I'm grabbing my ring. I'm supporting him on my left side while I'm pulling the ring on this side. Okay? And then from here, I'm going to switch my arm and just do one more bounce. And you can see he's on my back. My rings are where they should be. I'm going to lean forward and just do a little bit of tightening. Now this is going to naturally sit low. You really want to make sure that your baby is ready for this developmentally. I would say walking before you do a back carry in a ring sling, at least pretty close, at least pulling themselves upright, because you can see he sits a little bit lower on my back. He doesn't have more than one pass on him. He just has that one pass of fabric. So I want to make sure that he can support himself. If he sits a little low, this is similar probably to like the feeling of a torso carry, except for it's one shoulder. But this is a really great option if you're out and about and baby gets sleepy and you need a little bit more mobility. Sometimes an activity just calls for having baby on your back and all you have is a ring sling. I think he's tired. Anyway, and so to get him down, I would just hip scoot. I'm going to loosen this up just a smidge. I would hip scoot him around kind of the same way. Get him back on my front. All right. Now my rings are on my back, but if I needed to keep him this way, I could potentially keep him on my front like this. All right. So those are some of your options of wearing your ring sling with an older baby. This guy is fussy. Give him a try and let us know what you think. Thanks.